Hi, this is Dan Bullard, retired electronics engineer, sitting on the river again, this time in my little boat called Little Ambition. And right over there is my houseboat, Great Ambition, and that's where I live. Little Ambition, I got that when I retired, so because I have little ambition, but that's okay. I'm retired. Now, I want to talk to you about harmonics again and Law 5. Law 5 of the Bullard Laws of Harmonics says that when you have a distorted sine wave, the harmonics will happen at 0 degrees, 90 degrees, 180 degrees, or 270 degrees. And that's always true. Now, a friend of mine, who will remain nameless, Doug, thought that that might apply to clipping, but didn't apply to other kinds of distortion. It absolutely does. There's no magic to distortion. There's no magic to harmonics. You look at it and you think people, they believe in crystals and ghosts and fairies. I knew somebody who believed in ghosts. You know what was happening? They were taking pictures out the door of their house in the winter, and when they breathed, the fog from their mouth clouded the photo, and they got these clouds in front of them that they couldn't see, but the camera could see them. And they thought for sure they were ghosts. This is the same attitude that people who are looking for harmonics believe in. They believe in ghosts, fairies, magic powers, who knows? So, it's really easy. All you gotta do is read one of my books and you'll figure it out. Now, how do I know about this stuff? Because I worked on linearity with a lot of devices. I worked on linearity for DACs, RAM DACs, ADCs, and even on a voltage to frequency converter for China's version of NASA, right? Ministry of Aerospace. So I know about linearity, and I know how to test linearity, and I know how to look at linearity. And when I simulate linearity, I do it in Excel with a VLOOKUP table. Okay? So I do a VLOOKUP table that goes from -1 to +1, and then I apply a -1 to +1 sine wave to it, and I can see what the result is. And I get to see what the harmonics are when I create that. So it turns out that when you have a problem in a transfer function, like in an amplifier or a DAC or an ADC or whatever, you're going along, the sine wave is going along, and it hits that distortion, so it creates some bump. And then it goes up to the peak, and then it starts coming down, and then it hits that distortion again. It hits it at the same point, the same voltage point. It's guaranteed. Unless there's some hysteresis, and there's generally not hysteresis in negative feedback amplifiers, then you're going to see them happen exactly the same point in the transfer function. And because of that, anything that goes up and comes down, those are centered around 90 degrees. And anything that happens on the negative side, they're centered around 270 degrees. And so it's guaranteed that the harmonics are going to happen with a phase offset of 0, 90, 180, or 270. Guaranteed, absolutely guaranteed. There's no doubt about it. At first I couldn't believe it. You know, I was doing all kinds of experiments, and here's the thing with phases. Nobody looks at phases. Nobody. It's impossible to look at phases with a scope. And, I mean, you know, doing an FFT, because it's, you know, at Tektronix they say an FFT is just a button on a scope. But it's impossible to look at the phases. Even on an advanced instrument, it's impossible to look at the phases, because while the amplitudes are very low for signals that don't matter, the phases for signals that don't matter are all over the place. And so it's really hard to tell what matters and what doesn't matter when you look at the phase plot. But you can ignore the things that don't matter if you use the proper kind of instrument. And I've done that kind of thing. So don't think about it the way that most people think about it. The phases are important, and you're not going to get away with ignoring them because the phases are real. One thing I talk about in a couple of different instances is, let's say you get what looks like a harmonic, and you say, "Oh well, let's find out if that really is a harmonic." Look at the phase. Look at the phase. If the phase is 0, 90, 180, or 270, yeah, it's harmonic. If it's not one of those, it's not a harmonic. It's something else. Okay? Guaranteed, absolutely. Now, like I said, if there's hysteresis, you might be able to make the case for that. And you can then measure the hysteresis. But a lot of times, you'll get signals, even a spurious noise punch will hit you. And I mean, I think back to Raytheon. At Raytheon, they were testing space and military hardware, and right across from Raytheon parking lot was this big tower, this big radio tower. Okay, so these guys are testing very sensitive devices with a radio tower right next door, beaming right into their test floor. So that stuff can come from anywhere. You don't know. And hell, a nuclear bomb could explode in Portland right now, and that would just be a blip on the radar. But it's not a harmonic, right? The only things that are harmonics are created by problems in the transfer function. So if you have something that happens on the way up but doesn't happen on the way down, it's not going to be a harmonic. It will create harmonics for a short period of time, and then they'll go away. It's like when you're driving down the road. You're driving down the road, you hit a bump. You hear this bump, and that's it. But if you're driving down the road and you hear this tick, 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 what is that? It's a rock in the tread. You speed up, it goes tick, 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 and you slow down, it goes tick, 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 tick. That is the kind of thing we're talking about. It's some malfunction in the transfer function. And when that happens, that creates harmonics that have a guaranteed phase of 0, 90, 180, or 270. Guaranteed, absolutely. You can prove it a million ways from Sunday. And here's an example. I created lots of different kinds of harmonic distortion. I tried all kinds of things. And look at my phases down here. 0 and 180. That's it. Only those two phases. Now that's for a cosine wave. My friend Daver took a look at this because he was coming up with different results, and it turned out he was simulating the same way I was, except he was using cosine waves. With cosine waves, it's even easier. So if you can get it so that the fundamental is a cosine wave, then you only have two phases, 0 degrees and 180 degrees, period. And so like in this plot, with all these different kinds of distortion, you only get two phases, 0 degrees and 180 degrees. That's it. You never get anything else. Now the noise, don't ask me where the noise is going to go. When you have noise, it's a small signal, and so chances are the phase is just it's a random number. But remember, while the amplitude may be small, the phase is always a number between 0 and 2 pi. And so it could be any number at all. So you have to go in and get rid of the phases for things you don't care about. And that's one reason why it's really difficult to see the phases. So anyway, Doug, there's your answer, okay? And you got to simulate the right way. You got to simulate with a proper transfer function. If you're using Excel, I recommend a VLOOKUP table. If you're using something else, God help you. Figure it out. I can't help you. But you got a master's degree, you figure it out. Okay? So once again, from the river, this is Dan Bullard. See you later.